How do you sustain an idea? You know the idea is good, but once the world begins to notice it, that's when you see that the idea is real. Well, the idea for this game is beginning to feel real. Welcome back to my solo RPG development journey. The plan for this week was to begin to overhaul the GUI, which I tried to do last week but wasn't happy with the end result. I also began to figure out the crafting system for the game and create a number of icons for items. Overall, the game received another big graphical improvement this week and things are moving along very smoothly. I was finally able to create a base graphic for the GUI that I'm quite happy with and moved on to rebuild the in-game menu in Unity. The old gray layout, which I actually hard-coded instead of using Unity's visual GUI creation tools, had many problems. For starters, it didn't scale with the screen and it was quite challenging to work with. This new GUI looks a lot more fitting and overall feels much better. In the meantime, I took a look at some 3D models I made years ago for an old project. I'm still quite happy with the way they turned out and plan on using them for my current project, at least temporarily. So the plan is to make some icons for these items and to start figuring out crafting recipes for them. As you can see, we have a sword, an axe, a dagger, a mace, a spear, a greatsword, and a halberd. Eventually, many of these weapons will have different animations, advantages, and disadvantages, which should give players an extra layer of customization to play with their character builds. I wanted to have enough weapon types for a reasonable amount of creativity while also not overdoing it too much for now. In the future, there will be many more tiers of weapons that will look amazing, I hope, but for now, this is all we have. The next thing to do is to create icons for the items, but first, my family and I had some fun Christmas celebrations full of great blessings. Since we're still technically in the Christmas season, Merry Christmas to all of you. Alright, so this is generally the layout that I planned out for the character menu, and then on the back here, I started working on some stuff for the character menu and for the crafting. You see I was going for like that Minecraft style crafting grid. It turns out that's a very difficult thing to actually implement. You need to deal with things like trees to be able to like match. If you have a recipe that only requires 2 items, then you can put those 2 items say here or here or here or here or anywhere, so you can't match it square for square. You have to either use trees or regular expressions from what I could muster, and that seems very complicated. So I'm just going to go with one of the list kind of systems that you might find in The Witcher or Skyrim, where you select the item first and then the crafting recipe shows up and you can craft it if you have the items necessary. It's not as engaging, and perhaps someday I'll change it and make it more like the Minecraft style system, but for the time being, this is how it's going to be. And I actually just began to draw it out right here. It just kind of looks like that, and I'll show you guys what that's going to begin to look like in game. The next step was to take on the arduous process of making icons for the items that would appear in the player's inventory. I started by making a sword icon and ended up making 2 versions before finally settling on the third. I began by taking a screenshot of the 3D sword model and shrinking it down, but this version ended up looking really skinny and blurry, so I thought back to games that made me feel nostalgic, and I remembered the inventory icons of RuneScape and how excited it used to make me to get new items and see them in my inventory. So I took an icon from RuneScape to use as a reference image, and I have to say I love the way that the final icon turned out. I would say whenever you feel lost or stuck in your projects, think back to why you're working on it. For me, I wanted to recapture the feeling of discovery that I experienced in Morrowind, and in this case in RuneScape. The simplistic look of the in-game GUI was largely inspired by that of Morrowind, and I only nailed the feeling of the item icons once I thought about what I wanted to convey with my icons based on my experiences playing games that remain nostalgic for me today. The key feeling for items in my game should be that of simplicity and lighthearted joy at having something new in your inventory. I hope finding new items will never become tedious for players. So, to wrap up, I actually didn't end up having the time to implement the crafting system, but I did want to show some in-game changes, so I spent some time making the GUI we created at the beginning actually display information about the player. Alright, so here's the new in-game menu. As you can see, we have the character screen, which shows basic information about the player's character and stats. Here's the inventory, and you can see the new icons that I began to work on there. Here's the beginning of the crafting screen. You see how that list system is set up. Now, this is of course very much a work in progress, but you can click this button here, which doesn't really do anything yet. These other buttons here don't work yet either. I'll explain what all this will be eventually, but let's take another quick look at the character screen since it's the most finished one. As you can see, it displays all the basic information about about the player as well as stats, and there's also a spot for feats and skills, which hopefully I will be able to get done fairly soon. So I definitely hoped to get more done this week than I did, and I hope to make this video a lot longer, but my video editing software was being really buggy. But overall, I'm super excited about the progress and the direction in which things are going. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook for more frequent updates, and please like, share, and subscribe, and don't forget to leave any feedback on what I could do better in the comments section. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.